Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. There is a sneaky good game as Week 5 in college football begins on Friday night in the American Conference between Tulane and Houston. Let's break down who I think is going to win. Willie Fritz is in his 7th season as the head coach at Tulane, and he's had some good seasons and he's had some bad seasons. Last year they went 2-10, and they almost beat Oklahoma, but then they just completely collapsed. There was a lot of injuries, but this year they're 3-1, and they beat UMass 42-10, and then they beat Alcorn State 52-0. So again, when you're blowing out bad teams, that's always a good sign to show that you are way better than the competition that you're playing. A win is a win, but when you're barely beating teams like that, that's not a good look. But when you're blowing them out, that's always a good sign. They beat Kansas State, though. That was the headliner, 17-10. And Kansas State just beat Oklahoma again, that they've done 3 times in a row. So Tulane, that's a really good win. They're 3-0 at that point, kind of put them on the map, saying, hey, we're a good team this year. But then they lost to Southern Miss 27-24 in a classic letdown game after a big win. And they didn't play bad, but their defense wasn't as stout, and their offense just couldn't score enough points to beat them. Quarterback Michael Pratt, however, is a gamer. He had 247 yards, a touchdown, and an interception against Southern Miss, and he had 58 rushing yards. He's a dual threat. He can run, he can throw. He was essentially the only offense Tulane had last year when there were a lot of injuries, and even he was banged up, but he can play. Again, Michael Pratt's a fantastic quarterback. Running back Tyjae Spears, he had 114 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground against Southern Miss, and he had 74 receiving yards. Tyjae Spears is a really good running back. He's a dual threat. He can run, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And wide receiver Jaquan Jackson at 55 yards and a touchdown against Southern Miss. So that's always a good sign when you're for like a team like Tulane, how you have a dual threat quarterback, and then you have a running back that can run and he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and you have a good passing game. Then on the defensive side of the ball, Tylo Phillips, defensive lineman, had 3 tackles. Linebacker Nick Anderson had 4 tackles, and defensive back Jane Kennedy had 3 tackles against Southern Miss. So again, for Tulane, their defense has been pretty good to start the season. They've only given up 27 points to Southern Miss, but their defense is better than what it was last year, and their offense looks a lot better with a lot more healthy players. On the Houston side, Dana Holgorsen, he's 2-2 to start this season. And Houston last year had a fantastic season. Dana Holgorsen, his first 2 seasons with Houston, wasn't really doing that good, and he had a below 500 record. But then last year they broke through and won 11-2. But this year they're only 2-2. They beat UTSA 37-35 in overtime, but then they lost to Texas Tech 33-30 in overtime, and a game that was essentially the opposite of the UTSA game. They had a close win in overtime and then a close loss in overtime. So that's unfortunately what happens when you have too many close games. You're going to win some and you're going to lose some. Then they lost to Kansas 48-30. And again, a lot of people thought Houston would win because, again, it's Kansas. But Kansas does look like a lot better of a football team this year. So maybe that loss is not as bad as previously at the time people thought. And then they beat Rice 34-27. So that's a good win there to get back on track, even though they barely won. So they're only 2-2. So they do not look like the same team that they were last year. But they still have quarterback Clayton Tune. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the country. He had 249 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception against Rice, and he had 26 rushing yards. He doesn't run the ball too much, but he can, and his passing game is good. Running back Tayzon Henry had 112 yards and a touchdown, so at least Houston's running game is really good. Wide receiver Nathaniel Tank Dell. He's a short receiver, but they call him Tank because he's just such a beast. He's a great player. He had 134 yards and a touchdown. He will be in the NFL, even though he's small. And on the defensive side of the ball, defensive back Thabo Milwaukee had 3 tackles and an interception against Rice. Defensive lineman J. Michael Neal had 3 tackles, and linebacker Ronald Nunnery had 7 tackles. So Houston's defense, they've given up 48 points to Kansas, and they have given up a lot of points against a lot of opponents, but their offense can score points. Who's going to win this game? I think Tulane's defense has improved this year, and I think Tulane is going to prevent Houston from scoring as many points as they normally would, as they've done against some of these other opponents. But I do think Houston's offense with Clayton Tune and Nathaniel Tank Dell is going to be enough to push Houston over the top. I think Michael Pratt's a great quarterback, but this game is at Houston. If it was at Tulane, I would pick Tulane. But I think the Houston home crowd, Dana Holgorsen, I think is a little bit better of a coach than Willie Fritz. I think Willie Fritz can coach, and they got a good team. They're better this year. But I think Houston's going to find revenge and get back on the winning track, even though they've been losing a little bit this year. But I think they're going to win this game 35-31. It's going to be close. Tulane could win, but Houston's just got a little bit more explosiveness on offense than Tulane does, and I think Houston's defense is going to stop Tulane enough to get this win 35-31. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about this Tulane-Houston game and who's going to win and why, and I will see you next time.